The Creative Coliseum would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on treaty land, referred to as Treaty 4 territory, and that all people here are beneficiaries of this treaty. Treaty 4 encompasses the lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect and honor the treaties that were made on all territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we are committed to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration.
Hello and welcome to the Creative Coliseum.
Welcome as well. I also welcome you to the Creative Coliseum.
We do the same thing. I'm David.
I'm Allysia.
Awesome. And for those of you on the live stream, welcome to part 2. What are we talking about? What's this episode about?
Yeah, so this episode is going to be about overcoming writer's block. One of the things that I'd like to do with this podcast, and please, by the way, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, send us a message. It's just creativecoliseum@gmail.com. If you have any ideas of things that you think would be really, interesting for us to talk about, I've got my own list of ideas, and this is getting a little meta because we're going to be talking about overcoming writer's block, and that is something which can afflict podcasters as well. What do we talk about? So one thing, you can help us with writer's block by sharing any ideas you might have. But really what we're going to be doing today is getting into some of the strategies about, how we might, me and Dave have navigated these challenges and how, just maybe some tips and advice. Hopefully we can be a little bit tactical. I want to be able to give you something that you can use or something that you can try in your own life.
Yeah. So this is going to be a very practical episode, a very pragmatic episode.
Yes. That's my jam. Let's let's get down to brass tacks or whatever they say.
Brass tacks, before we do that though, we'll throw to an ad. I'll be right back.
Hi, I'm David Roman from Roman Music YQR. Are you looking for affordable music production services without sacrificing sonic quality? Maybe you're a filmmaker who's looking to heighten the emotional resonance of your film with original music. I can do both of those things for you. I specialize in recording, mixing, mastering, and music composition. I've been at it for over 20 years in various genres like metal, rock, hip-hop, ambient, electronic, and dance music. I'm pretty confident that I can take your project to the next level, and honestly, I just love collaborating with new people. You can email me at romanmusic.yqr@gmail.com, or if you want to see more of my past work, you can look at soundcloud.com/romanmusicyqr. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and I'm looking forward to collaborating. Roman Music YQR, moody music for the masses.
All right.
So, writer's block.
Writer's block.
Dave, have you ever had writer's block before?
Yeah. I was trying to think back actually about, when was the last time I experienced writer's block? And I actually was having a hard time remembering. I know I have definitely had times where I just, and let me clarify this actually first too, because people can think when you say writer's block, literally writing like as an author, and that's one way. Yeah, but there's lots of different kinds of writer's block, right? I think just as an artist, you can just
think of it like a creative block, some kind of creative
almost,
block,
right?
But writer's block is the term we're all familiar with, so we're going with that.
Is that kind of the layman's term? We're
throng out all kinds of phrases today. Brass tacks, layman's.
Brass taxes. Some of them could be terrible terms. Who knows? We never know the history behind these terms. But anyways, no. So I think I was trying to think of the last time I experienced it, and I guess I haven't had writer's block in quite a long time, which is like a good thing. But I definitely have experienced it in the past. There's been times when I think more as a musician, more than anything, where, I just go through these phases of time where suddenly I just can't write things. I can't seem to, I don't even know if like completing things is really what I boil it down to. It's more like the actual writing of the piece, right? And there's been times when I haven't been able to come up with solid ideas. Or
you talking about like long periods of time or short periods of time?
It can be long. It can be months. I guess there's probably shorter writer's block too, right? Like there's like within a day, maybe you're writing something and then suddenly you have a block and you take a break for half the day and you come back. Like that could probably happen too. But it seems like for me, it's always these extended periods of kind of not being able to come up with any inspiration or anything. And yourself, what? Tell me your history.
Well, awkwardly, I've never had writer's block.
Oh wow, okay. So we're on similar pages in.
So
like,
well,
currently.
I was hoping not for your own sake. I was hoping
Yeah.
you have had writer's block, because obviously that's not good for you personally, but it'd be good because then you can like relate to other people who.
Right.
So I was a little reluctant to give advice about something that I've never experienced, but I also think that maybe part of the reason I haven't experienced it makes me qualified to give advice on this topic because I've deliberately cultivated this writer's block free kind of relationship with art. And I mean, I think one of the things that I've noticed is that I sort of shut things down at certain times in my life. Like I'm not always creating.
Right.
I'll have periods of intense activity when I'm, say, making an album or prepping for it, or doing a lot of writing for a project or something. And then there's other periods where I'm like, I'm not doing that at all. And I just sort of, it gets like shut down.
Right.
So it's sort of like I open the doors and I shut the doors, and it's pretty deliberate. It doesn't feel like I'm at the mercy of the muse in that sense.
I like that. The mercy of the muse. Yeah. I can relate to that somewhat. I think for me, because I've been a commercial writer, and I think that changes things a lot for somebody. I can't really afford writer's block.
That's fair.
right?
That's fair. When you're a creative person and you're doing it for money. Yeah.
It's like, okay, here's your deadline. This thing has to be done by then. So you just start pushing through and pushing through. And I think that's why I haven't experienced it in a very long time, is because I just got used to just finding ways to keep pushing through my writing. And the well hasn't really dried up, and that's fascinating. I don't know why I'm at that point now, but
well, we're going to get into why, maybe. When we have a listen to some of your strategies,
we're going to get into
we'll crack the code.
Clearly, we are the experts because we do not experience writer's block. No, but I mean, I will say that I do experience. Again, I want to distinguish them, but I do experience. I don't know what the term is, but it's like the inability to take a project to its end. Like that part.
The completion, yes.
The completionist part is what I experience. I don't experience the writing as much. I could come up with so many ideas. I can flesh a song out. I can record it. I can have it there. But then that final process of like mixing and mastering it and doing all those things, that's hard. I mean, I guess that's kind of the main area I do writing. I don't. I was kind of thinking, like, is it writing and content creation? And there's like a little bit of writing and content creation, but it's like heavily process oriented, right? It's like, hey, I set up this OBS session.
Yeah.
Hey, I edited this video. Like, it's not really, you don't have like you're creative, but you're not like creating an original melody or an original, some original words or things like that. So,
yeah, that's fair.
So maybe that's another reason why I don't experience it as often
because you're doing a different kind of thing.
Yeah,
I see. But there's still the idea part of it. So I think part of writer's block is being blocked from having ideas of things to even talk about.
Yes.
Such as like, who should we have on the show? Or if we're talking about this podcast, what should we talk about in these conversations? So I do think that applies, even if it's a different sort of thing. One thing before we start getting to our tips, Dave and I have each come up with 3 tips.
Yeah, I have actually several, so I can.
I have more than 3 also.
I can cap it off where we
can just keep going.
We'll go back and forth.
3-hour-long episode.
Yeah. We'll go until we're complete.
Yes. Okay. So that's great. One thing I'll say just from personal experience as well, even though I haven't experienced writer's block, I definitely have a couple modes. I don't know if you've had this experience before where I call it art mode. So there's normal life where I'm feeling regular, going about my regular tasks and my head is regular. Everything's really regular. But then if I get into art mode, like something, I don't know, maybe I'm getting inspired by something. Maybe I listen to something or I watch something that like, I don't know, tweaks my curiosity. All of a sudden I'm like shifted into this other dimension. And the way that I think about life is totally different. And that's when I'm in some kind of creative state. So it's like a different way that I experience the world. And if I'm in normal mode all the time, then I'm not going to get inspiration.
Right.
If I'm in art mode, that's where I'm going to get the inspiration. So some part of my life has to at least be oriented towards tilting to art mode, at least occasionally.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm not going to have any of that creative flashing.
Yeah. I like that you kind of separate those phases. And I think I maybe need to get better at getting out of art mode. And
we talked about this in another episode.
Yeah.
We're going to get really self-referential about this, by the way, by the time we're on episode 100.
So if you go back to episode, this is like the MCU. We were talking about this earlier. It's like, you have to watch episode 2, 6, 7.
The tangled web.
The tangled web. No, but no. Sorry. Yeah. Now I lost my. Here we go. Now I have
art mode. You're too much.
I have thinker's block. But
you're too much in art mode.
yes, so I'm too much in art mode. I'm constantly thinking about creating, constantly, and in an exhausting way, in a way that's anxiety driven at times. The first thing that happens when I wake up is I start thinking about creating, and it's hard to get out of it. Like I start thinking about, oh, okay, there's a podcast today. I really want to maybe it should be like this, or how it should flow like this, or should do like I start thinking about the ideas and then what I'm going to do, like what process things do I have to do. So I start thinking about, I got to set the cameras, I got to set the mics, I got to do my mind is constantly in this productivity mode, and I have a hard time shutting it off. I have to consciously just do things that take me away from that, whether it's visiting with somebody who isn't a creative person. Even visiting with somebody creative is good because you're just talking it out, right? Like, yeah, we're creating right now, but I do feel this is more therapeutic than it is a high stress productivity type thing.
Yeah, it's like purging the anxiety out of it somehow.
Yeah, it does, right? So yeah, I have to really consciously make efforts to put myself in situations where I'm not being creative because I work in the creative fields too. And so I'm constantly being creative. I'm constantly thinking about, I'm running out of time for my own creativity. I'm 42 or whatever. And am I 42? Yeah, I can't even remember my age. I'm 42 and I have all these things left I want to accomplish and my energy is really low. And, so like, I'm just great. And there can almost be a block that comes out of that.
I was going to say, this is like opposite writer's block.
Yeah.
Too much.
And maybe that's why I can't finish.
Fuel.
That's why I can't finish. Right. Yeah.
You burn yourself out.
Yeah.
So with that as the framework of this whole conversation, and our problems clearly outlined, what is a tip for you about overcoming writer's block? Let's start with you.
Okay.
Tip number 1.
Okay. So I have them on in my notes here because I'm very professional.
Yeah. I'm professional with my piece of paper.
Let me pick one of my favorite ones here. Change your tools. I like this one. So for me, one of the things that has helped in music a lot is I make a lot of my music with electronic instruments. So I'm using plugins, as they're called, right? And those emulate different synthesizers, drum machines, things like that. I also use a lot of drum samples, so I'm constantly downloading new sample packs. So by getting a new tool and trying a new tool, sometimes it'll lead my creativity in a different direction, and I'll create something very different than what I normally would have. An example of this is I recently created a beat in FL Studio. I don't use FL Studio. But at work, we picked up lots of copies of FL Studio because our clients are super into FL Studio. So I fumbled my way through that program and created a new song in it. And now I'm working on that song and I'm finishing it. Now, admittedly, I transferred it into Ableton because I love Ableton. I'm way better in Ableton. I'm way quicker.
But the genesis of that idea was because of...
Exactly. Yeah. Bringing it into a different program, having different tools. I created something very specific there. So I think that's a big tip, an easy one. Honestly, you can find a new tool now for cheap. Like I was saying, you can go online and get free samples. You can just go find free drum samples or free loops or free whatever, and you can start tweaking with those things, and suddenly you have a whole new tool for nothing. It's endless.
Yeah, and it's easy in theory, 100%. I find that with this one's so good, but I'm extraordinarily resistant to this one. This is the one that I need to actually practice.
That's cool.
So I've had experiences like you describe where I remember having this really cool keyboard when I was growing up playing piano. It was like an electric grand. So it was like a grand piano, but it had a lot of buttons. And for the most part, I didn't really play with the buttons. But then when I was like 15, 16, I started getting really into the buttons. And the things that I was creating were totally different because of that, because I was creating different sounds aside from piano.
Right.
So, and you're right, that takes you in different directions that you wouldn't have otherwise gone. So that's cool. I've had those cool experiences, but I just, when I think about that, I'm like, no, don't expose me to new technologies. And I shrivel up. I don't know if it's like a fear or something.
Yeah.
I gotta get over that.
Talking about self-referential things again, but we did talk a little bit about our writing process in another episode about how you're kind of find like you stay in the same genre or kind of, you have your comfort area.
I stay piano vocals. That's like where I'm going to just stay forever until I die.
And I'm like in so many different genres that you could probably hear two different songs sometimes and not realize they're me because they're so different, right? There's pros and cons to each approach. And so, in terms of changing tools, that's one of the reasons why I do change tools is because I want to try something something different that I haven't tried before. So a good example of this is in film scoring. I don't always film score in a moody electronic way, although that is my favorite way to film score. I have done comedies. I've done lighthearted things. So then suddenly I'm going, how do I create a symphony?
Yeah.
And then I'm getting a symphonic pack and I'm working with a symphony, and it's like a totally different experience.
Yeah.
You think in a totally different brain because, it's not like a drum bass vocal kind of thing. It's like, I need to bring in the bass. I need to bring in the brass instruments. I need to bring in the woodwinds. I need to bring and when do they come in and why do they come in? All those kinds of questions are completely different in a symphonic arrangement. So I really enjoy that, like being challenged to use new tools and then create from a different mindset. And then I create something very different. And the theme song of this podcast actually was created that way using, I think it's called Play. I'm trying to remember the brand, but it's a whole plugin suite of really high-end symphonic instruments. And most of it was created using those. And it's because I purchased that pack and they were like, hey, we want to make this ad that kind of looks like this modern university ad we've seen. So then I listened to it and I was like, oh, okay, cool. I need new tools for that. and then, I got to play and make something very unique. And it's probably one of my favorite pieces, honestly. So sometimes that's what happens when you experiment, is you actually make something really different and maybe really good too.
Very inspirational.
Yeah.
I'm very inspired. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll stop being like the crotchety old lady on a rocking chair, sticking with the same tools forever.
I'm going to get you a new tool. I'll find one for you.
You'll like force me into it.
I'm going to get you one of those Bontempi keyboards I was talking about with the air coming out of it.
Oh, that'd probably be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I don't even know if it still exists, but yeah.
All right. Tip number 2.
Tip number 2,
I'm going to bring this one down. So, even though I go through periods of relative creative, I want to say, like I go through pockets, right? Pockets of intense inspiration and action, and then pockets where I'm just doing different things. So maybe I'm writing an album, but then the next year I'm going to university, and that's a very different kind of thing.
Right.
So even though I have these big changes, what I'm always doing is capturing ideas whenever I have them. And the way that I do this is I actually use Google Keep. And I've been doing this for a long time. So Google Keep is like this it's very, very basic. It's a very simple note-taking app. But you can, I like it because I can access it on my phone or my computer or whatever. It's just kind of like synced up everywhere, which ease of use is really important to me. So if I see a quote online that I think is really cool, that just reminded me I'm going to have to share a quote that I think is really cool a little later on. Or if there's an image that I want to capture for some reason, or some discussion, or like a video or a movie that someone recommended to me, or lyric ideas I have, or ideas, I should write about that, or I should think about this more. Google Keep allows me to just capture all that. And you can add hashtags basically. So that's how you organize.
Cool.
So I have like a hashtag of lyrics. So if I'm ever finding myself randomly inspired to sit at the piano, I've got this like lyrics bank. So I'm at least not like la ba da de doo doo. I've got some like words that I could launch off from, which I find really helpful. It's kind of like filling the bank of ideas, such that when I'm ready to get into more fruitful music creating mode, let's say, I've got this like huge bank of audio clips of random piano ideas I've had, or melodies that I've come up with, or lyrics that I was writing, titles of anything. It ends up being like quite a deep vault of ideas.
Yeah.
When I was digging into the vault for the album that we recorded in 2020, released in 2022, Dear Disaster, I literally had hundreds of audio tracks that I was combing through to find those ideas that I wanted to flesh out a little bit more. So then it's easier to be creative because you're never starting completely from scratch, which I think is a little intimidating. There's this this comfort in knowing that there's an abundance of ideas.
Yeah.
One more thing I want to say about this is, well, actually, I'll save that for the next tip. I think that's pretty much, let's leave it with the clippings and Google Keep.
Yeah, I was just going to add that one of the things that kind of goes hand in hand with that is organization. And, I'm very disorganized sometimes, and then I'm very organized other times. Like, I have a huge Dropbox. I mean, it's massive. I think my current Dropbox has about 4 terabytes of information.
Good Lord.
Yeah, right. And it's a lot of it's like important. Like it's live streams, it's song ideas, it's lyric ideas. There's just tons of creative stuff going on in there. And it can be quite difficult to navigate sometimes. So I know what you mean by, if you have this one place where you can put all these ideas and then navigate it easily, that's much easier to access when you do feel like writing. I get by, but sometimes it can be quite stressful. I have to like dig through my archives and find the right thing. And then I move that to like a more current area where like I'm going to work on it here. But I also, what I've done, which is bad, is I have my phone, my notes is full of lyrics and random lists. And I like, there's so many random things going on in my notes. And sometimes my voice memos has little random things in it. And I often don't even go back to half of that stuff because it's just too, it's messy. It's messy. It's not enjoyable to work with, right? Whereas if you have something like you're talking about, like an app that can, and we're not sponsored by Google Keep by any means, but if you have an app like that, I think it would make the process a lot more less stress-free.
Again, it's very simple. So I can't reliably use anything that's more complicated than literally just taking a note. But it's just the hashtags. That's the only organizational system that exists, but it's enough. I mean, some people probably need something a little bit more organized, but for me, that's enough.
No, that sounds good. We had something like that in Femme Fragile. I think it was Evernote. I think it was called.
Yeah, Evernote's even a little complicated for me.
It is. Hey?
I use it sometimes, but it's not my main go-to.
Yeah, so we did that, and we would put all of our
What just happened?
Oh, I see what happened.
What happened?
Uh-oh. There we go. We're good.
We're good?
We're still good. We're still good. This monitor kaput because it ran out of battery.
Oh,
so kind of
it looked like the screens off to the side here just panicked. They were like, huh, huh.
We can edit this out after the fact. I think I just want to, before we continue, I don't know I know we have somebody lurking. Tell us if everything's still good.
Yeah, let us know if we vanished.
Otherwise, we'll just continue on here.
We're just going to continue on.
Yeah, I think it's recording, so we're good. Let me just double check.
So anyway, that's pretty much the gist of my second one. Keeping track of everything, random notes, and tagging them.
Yeah, so being organized is key, I think.
And also just being in the habit of actually paying attention enough to those ideas. If you have that, like, oh, this is cool, save that. If you have an idea that pops in your head, like a sentence, you're like, ooh, that's really juicy. I was having a conversation with my cousin the other day, and we were just joking around and chatting. I can't even remember what she said. She said something. I was like, ooh, that would be a good lyric. And I was just joking. And then I thought about it. I'm like, no, that actually would be a good lyric. And I had to write it down.
If it's good, put it down.
Yeah. You never know if you're going to use it.
I actually get really sad because I have a lot of ideas that come and go, and I never get to flesh them out. And some of them are really good. And I just like I'm not maybe in the right space to put them down.
But you might be 10 years from now.
Yeah, right. But like, even like, I try to go record them, and then I do, and then I kind of lose what it was. Because like we were talking about this in a writing episode, I definitely have this thing where I'm hearing an entire song in my head. So I'm hearing all the pieces, not just the melody or something like it. The melody is important, but I'm also like, oh, it's this vibe. It's this kind of drums. It's this kind of synth, you know? And so sometimes it's hard. You can't capture that in a note. You can only capture the melody or the words. Right. Yeah. So yeah.
This is a problem I've never had to deal with.
Yeah. It's frustrating as hell.
So what's tip number 3?
Okay, let's see here. Oh, my phone's acting up here. My
all the technology is panicking.
My tools. Yes, don't rely on technology, even though you have to. Okay, this one is good. De-stress and create smaller tasks. So sometimes our block can be due to just feeling like it's too overwhelming. It's too big. I don't want to even look at it. And I get this one a lot, actually. I get this one from when we're talking about finishing projects. I get this one a lot where I think about, oh, now I have to mix and auto-tune this song and all these different things. And like, that's just such a process, and it's so tedious, and it's part of it I enjoy, part of it I don't. And then I get overwhelmed and I just don't even start. And so sometimes if you can break it down into smaller tasks, like, okay, so all we're going to do today is tune the main vocal. Today I'm going to focus on kick and snare or whatever, I'm talking about mixing, but from a writing perspective, it could be, today I'm just going to try to bite off one verse or whatever. Like, you break it down into smaller chunks that become more manageable. Obviously if you're a commercial artist, like I have been, you have deadlines and sometimes that list, you break it down that list so that you know what you have to focus on next. It's not so much so you can take it at a slower pace. It's more about being aware of what steps are left. And then you actually see those steps disappear and it seems more manageable, right?
Yeah, this is a really common thing that they recommend for people with ADHD as well.
I might have.
Yes, but exactly. It's like the whole task, write a song. It's like a blob. It's like this. But if you start pinning it down into its components, it all of a sudden is way less scary. It's like the beast is tamed, and you can work with it. And I could see that being even more important with deadlines, because again, if you have write a song, scary beast on the deadline, you need to figure out, okay, if I want to get from point A to point B in X amount of time and not be late and wreck my reputation, I need to figure out what steps I'm going to take every day to reach this end product.
Yeah. I like that you brought up the ADHD thing too, because I think maybe we should clarify that sometimes different people's brains are going to work differently, right? And not every technique is going to work for everybody's brain. Like, I mean, some people, again, as an ADHD brain, maybe that's something that would make sense for it, right? Somebody else might not be okay with that. Some people really like organized chaos. I know that sounds, that's an oxymoron, but there is like they have their own organization in chaos, which is so strange. I mean, I've been in that moment before creatively where something just looks completely chaotic, but it's kind of organized to me.
Oh, I wish I could remember the URL off the top of my head. So some people are really bad at, I'm not judging, but are really bad at breaking down tasks. So I know some people who look at the task, even if it's a simple task, like organize my bedroom, and they find that to be overwhelming. Like, how do I even do that? But there's tools with AI that you can use now. I can't remember the name. You can type in, okay, like AI, help me break this down into a series of like 10 tasks, organize my bedroom, or write a song. Right. And it'll give you that step-by-step if you're unable to figure it out yourself. And it's not going to be perfect because it's, the process of writing a song for you is maybe going to be different than what like an AI program would generate, but it's still helpful. I think those tools can be used for good and as well as evil, I suppose.
Yeah, we need to find the good. Yeah, for sure. And that sounds like one of those areas where it can be. Yeah.
But know those tools exist.
Yes.
If you're like, okay, that's great, Dave, but I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. So small tasks.
Yeah.
Create smaller tasks. And sometimes then that also just gives you a real roadmap for what you're doing. I do want to say one more thing too before moving on to the next one, that a lot of these that I looked up, I actually tried to see if I could find real data around some of this stuff. And most of these were data-based. They were things that have been actually researched about helping people with their cognitive process and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, these are things that try them on and see what they do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We've been creative people for a while, but you want to trust probably data aggregates more than our anecdotes. Yeah, so that's a good thing to mention.
I think our anecdotes do a good job of demonstrating, because we've maybe stumbled upon some of these things without actually looking for data-driven things, and we've had success with them. And then you go, oh, well, that's the reason why I had success. Like, it is actually congruent with improving my mental clarity or whatever, So yeah. Nice. So what do you got next?
Yeah, number 4. Okay. Listen to the muse, which is such an obvious. I guess we're talking about the muse today. I don't know what I was saying before. Meddling. I did an alliteration. I'm never going to remember it now. Anyways, listen. So I guess look closely, because the beautiful might be small. The muse, I have found, if we're going to refer to it as some kind of animate object, which I think is it's cool. I like referring to the muse as this, like, this wind or this I don't know. Right. I don't believe in the muse, I should say. If you do, that's awesome. That's really cool. I think the muse exists as an idea. And I think it's a really fruitful idea for me.
Because it's been a feminine imagery before.
Yeah.
Is that what it was before?
It's like the Greek, Greek muses or whatever who would wreck ships or something like that. Okay. They did some dodgy stuff to sailors, awesome. But the idea is that for me is that I've never found my inspiration or the muse to be loud. I've never found it to be like blaring lights. It's got the boombox on its shoulders outside of my bedroom window serenading me. It's not like an alarm going off. It is really quiet. It's basically, it's like a little whisper in my ear. So if I'm watching Bo Burnham's Inside,
nice.
I just had to drop it. And I'm listening to it, and then afterwards, I feel like just a slight nudge to go play piano. That's the muse. It's not like, go play piano now, you're going to have a great idea. It's like, I kind of feel like I should go play piano right now, and act on that. And same thing with writing lyrics. I find that they're really small moments where I have this like image of myself when I was a teenager. I remember one time, this must have been at like O'Hanlon's or something like that. I have a memory of going to the bathroom and then like getting an idea and pulling out a pen and a paper from my wallet or from my bag, just like writing on like using the wall as my board to write down whatever lyric I had, and thinking like, oh, this like personifies the cool artist that I want to be. Like I'm so cool that I'm, ignoring social norms by writing this down in the bathroom. But that's not how it is for me, like 99.9% of the time.
Right.
It's not this like, holy crap, big burst of inspiration at all places in the bathroom. It's like this gentle little, that's kind of neat. And so it's so easy to not write those things down.
Right. I had to laugh a little bit because like it's like every Hollywood film that's about like an artist, and then just this big moment, this big epiphany, and you're right. It's typically not like that. There was I can't even give you too much context as to what this was, but there was like a local artist who created like a fake trailer of themselves, and that I worked on, and that was like one of the pieces in the trailer, like looking at this poster and looking at this thing. Oh, I got an idea, like kind of thing, like, and it's like boom, like big moment, and this is the big moment that things happened. I can agree with you that it's quieter. It's not as intense and ridiculous. The odd time it has been for me where I'm like overwhelmed by the need to do something.
Yeah.
But for the most part in my daily life, the creative urge just kind of keeps, just poking at me a little bit.
Do you ever, have you ever had this with dreams where they say that if you practice dream recall, like you wake up and then you write down your dreams, if you're in that habit, your dreams become more vivid. And you remember them better because you're essentially training yourself to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And what you pay attention to expands. So I think this is the same thing with listening to those whispers, the little muse. You're training your attention to you're basically valuing it by giving it attention. Right. So if you don't do that, if you have that like slight inclination to write something and then you don't, what you're basically saying is like, that's not that important.
Yeah.
And then it's not going to happen as much, or you're not going to catch it when it does.
That's actually really timely for me because I've been struggling with insomnia for weeks now, and my dreaming is so vivid. It's stupid vivid. I just want it to stop. Like every time I go to sleep, it's just like,
just give me rest.
Like, seriously, put me in deep sleep. I don't want to like. I watched the new SpongeBob SquarePants movie yesterday, and they referred to it as sleep movies or something like that, or scary sleep movies was nightmares. But it's like watching a movie in your
scary sleep movies.
Only you're in it, right? And so I just sometimes I need a break from that. But it's an interesting practice. Yeah, it's like you get in the habit of doing that, and your brain will just will recall things more effortlessly. I wonder if that could apply then very easily to putting things down, like. Every time I have a melodic inspiration, putting it down, like your brain just gets used to paying attention to it. And
yeah.
And
then you actually can pick up on those cues. Actually, this just one more thing with this. It relates to what you were saying about the movie trailer and the big dramatic moments. The way that Hollywood portrays not only inspiration, but also like emotions in general.
Oh God,
like the feeling of sentiment or the feeling of nostalgia, all these things. I almost wonder if it desensitizes us to our own experience of our own emotions.
Yeah.
Because the way that it's like how movies are more colorful and vivid than real life. Mm-hmm. It gives us this way that we should have our feelings, but then we don't. So then our own feelings feel a little watered down by comparison.
Yeah. When I was young, I used to constantly look for these big moments and these big emotions, and I would have them, but they were overwhelming and ridiculous and not really healthy. Mm-hmm. And I was set up by my expectations from media, from TV, from film, like constantly thinking I'm going to have this big romantic moment with this person, and then we're going to live happily ever after. And like every romantic film is exactly the same. It's like beautiful getting together, and then there's like some conflict, and then they get back together, and it's big gesture moment.
Yeah.
And then everything's great. Like that's like the cliche rom-com.
Format, boombox outside of window.
Exactly. Yeah. Like that's the whole thing, right? Running at the airport to catch them before they leave, like that kind of. I think that was Garden State. I think they did that.
Garden State. Yeah.
I hated the ending. I love that movie, but I don't like these cliche endings. They drive me crazy. But anyway,
Yeah, it kind of messes you up for what your expectations about real life are. And most of us, by the time we get a little older, we start to realize that real life is not a movie, even though it's very difficult to separate that when we're younger. But I think we also, for people who have only dabbled in creativity or who maybe are thinking about this, but who haven't done a lot of creative work themselves, keep in mind that you might have this like Hollywoodified idea of what being a creative person actually is.
Yeah. And even like this kind of goes back to talking about the careers in the creative field. You know, we always expect to be the star, the big thing, and most of us end up being like this, like like you're running piano TV, teaching piano lessons. I'm doing a lot of podcasting for people or content creation and small.
Yeah, we're not like on the stage to our million adoring fans or whatever.
Yeah. So I mean, all these things you can keep kind of a little more grounded, and I think that helps the creative process a lot too, because you don't have to shoot for the biggest thing.
Right.
You don't, right? So yeah.
So what's your number 5?
What's my next one? Let's see here. What do I got here? I like this one. So just being yourself. And this might sound like really cliche and simple, but ultimately everybody, we talk about the subjectivity of creativity. It's a mouthful. It is subjective, right? Nobody likes the same thing. Well, not nobody, but people are drawn to different things. So for instance, I'm a huge like sad boy rap fan. I love droning guitars, and it's really sad and depressing. And there's all these like kind of raspy layers of vocals that sometimes are tuned and stuff. And I just love the vibe. I love the thing. I might show that to the next person and they're just like, nope, not for me at all. There's so many genres. There's so many approaches out there. So one of the things about being creative is you have to do it for yourself at some level. And I know even as a commercial artist, you don't get to do that all the time, but I do have to express myself within that and be confident and just do that. And what I mean by that is I can create a song and then I can go, oh, it doesn't sound like this thing. It doesn't sound exactly like that thing. Well, I'm never going to sound exactly like that thing. And even if I do, why do I want to sound exactly like that thing? Like it's already being done. I'd like to put my own twist on things. So by being yourself, sometimes you can avoid getting blocked by the need to sound exactly like something else. And okay, I've experienced this with clients so much when I worked in a recording studio and I recorded music, because they want to be exactly like this thing. They have this big idea of what it's going to be. And it's cool to have these grand ideas and grand visions of what your project can be. That's cool. But at some level, you have to accept what it is. You're coming to a small studio in Regina. You are the person you are with the voice you have and the talents you have. Shoot for the stars, but then also figure out where your unique thing is and get it to the best it can in that moment in time. And I've had so many clients revisit. I had this one young guy who, tried really hard, was really into it. And he would come back every time to the studio. We would have worked on a song, got it to a certain point. He comes back the next time, scraps it all, starts again. And this would go on. And like it just kept happening to the point where nothing was ever getting done because the writer's block was telling him, this isn't what I envisioned. This isn't up there. Rather than just being who the person was at the time, they're like, no, I need to be this thing.
Actually, I'm glad you're talking about this, because maybe then in the way that you're framing it, I have experienced a form of writer's block. Because I remember when I first joined Cat Has the Key, which was my very first band. It was the band that I was in with Rob Hillstead.
Shout out, Rob.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we got to keep our Rob quota shout outs going here. I think the thing that happened is I would write a lyric for one of the songs and a melody, and then I would scrap it because I'd be like, no, it's not good enough. And then I'd redo it. I'd do like a brand new melody. And for some of the songs, I did this like 3 times, and it becomes really impractical. Mm-hmm. And I remember going into The Criminal Kid, which wasn't it was my next main project, and thinking the same thing, thinking about that and thinking, okay, I'm not going to go into this project with that, like, okay, I'm going to rewrite everything so it's perfect. It's just going to be what it is, and I'll get better as I go. Right. And that was it was way better. I was able to be a lot more prolific in that context.
Yeah. No, and I struggle with this a lot because I'm a perfectionist. I really do. I struggle with hearing it and going, no, it could be just a little better. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is because I do have this public image of, David's an audio engineer in town who's really good, and he puts out really good stuff. So then I keep thinking I just have to keep hitting that certain level, a certain degree of quality. which is why I really enjoy content creation, honestly, because even though we're making something pretty high quality, I know the bar is really low, and I almost appreciate that. Like
It's freeing.
It's freeing. People are way more accepting of imperfection in the content creation world and podcasting and all these places. It's not. Yeah, you're not expected to be this completely professional, polished product all the time. Whereas I think in music, there's an element of that almost is expected. Not in every genre, but probably in most of the mainstream genres. It's like, oh, you have to sound really polished, really well mixed, and really loud, and all these different things. And very, very few examples exist anymore of things that aren't like that break through. Right? It's popular music is flooded by really pro quality stuff. Yeah,
That's fair.
yeah.
Okay. So be yourself.
What do you got? Yeah, be yourself.
Okay. So number 6.
Okay.
This one's going to be about input, high quality input. So if you're creating, you're producing a form of output, right? So in order to create output, you need input. And that input isn't, I mean, I think it's really simple. I think the kinds of input that produce high quality works are, am I being inspired by other music? Am I listening to other albums? Am I watching movies that inspire me in other ways? Am I engaging? Even just conversations can be inspiring. They can give ideas that I might not have had. Going to the museum, going for a walk, doing normal life stuff is really you can't be in creative mode all the time. You have to chew on some things too, as opposed to. I was gonna go with the spitting it out, but that is not the vibe I'm going for. We're not spitting out when we create things, I suppose. But we need things to digest and kind of build into our own fibers. So now I'm just going strong with the food analogies
the food
right
analogies
now.
are there. Yeah, yeah.
You need input to digest, and then as now I'm thinking output is going to go way in the wrong direction. So I'm just going to walk away from the whole food metaphors. But high quality input, read books, have conversations, emotionally engage in life. Basically, don't do what I've done before, and I think what a lot of creative people have done before, which is detach and withdraw.
Right.
There's this I don't know, maybe obsessive tendency that you want to or it's like a purity thing. Don't take anything in because what you produce has to be purely you.
Oh, yeah.
So you're like, oh, I can't listen to albums because then my album's going to sound like their album or something like that. It's like this purity thing. Or don't take in ideas from books because then it's going to pollute my own ideas and I'm going to be parroting someone else instead of being myself. I think what we do with these kinds of inputs is it gets filtered through whatever our personalities are, and we catch on to the things and integrate it in a way that's a lot more holistic than I think just imitation.
Yeah.
The ideas kind of become our own. We grow into them. It's not, it doesn't have to be derivative. But I think that's a really important part of being creative. That's how I get inspired most of the time.
Yeah. I really like that. I want to build on that a bit too by saying, there's been times when because you talked about you can't be in creative mode all the time. I think again, this is me. My brain is just fried with overproductivity. And one of the things that I do, speaking of living daily life, is I just start doing something like a chore, putting my clothes away or doing dishes. I did read this was one of those things that you can do to actually get your brain out of writer's block, because then ideas will just flow naturally. Then you're not forcing them out. It's like you're doing something repetitious that is just kind of Zen-like and simple, and then the brain is more free to interact with that part of itself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sometimes I'll just do dishes. I'll fold laundry. I'll maybe clean up my space. There's a lot of things like that I'll do that will just help me kind of reset my creative brain a bit.
Yeah. And I guess I need to add a really important note to this, that I'm also not a big fan of constant input, because there can be that sense where you're every second of your day is you're taking something and you're watching something, you're listening to something, you're reading something, you're consuming something. That's not going to help with writer's block either, because kind of what you say, it's filling everything up and it gets really busy and buzzing.
Yeah.
So there's also, maybe this is just an additional 7th thing or something, but taking time to give space, because ideas need to breathe. This is something I think a lot of musicians are really familiar with. The idea that if you practice piano for like 6 hours a day, it's not really that helpful compared to practicing, say, only 3 or 4, which is still a lot of practice, by the way.
Yeah.
But if you practice 3 or 4 hours a day, you rest, you have like a really good sleep, and you leave space, things come together a lot more nicely. It's not just about like grinding out as much as you can. It's like connections continue to be formed, and your brain's doing all this stuff in the background that you don't even understand.
Yes.
I don't understand it, but it does happen.
Yeah. That's a really important one for me to hear. I think about this every day. Is I'm like, I put on a podcast and then I put on.
I
a
do this
video.
all the time.
And then it's like I can't have silence. Like there's always got to be something on stimulating me, and you're right. You get too full. But I also want to go back to what you said about listening to other artists and people being worried about the purity of their creativity. I thrive on checking out other people's stuff. Listening to music, looking at the way a video is edited, watching another Twitch streamer or whatever it is. Like I love seeing how other people are doing things, because then I take bits of what they're doing to add to my own approach. And then it becomes this interesting smorgasbord of things. And let's be honest, this is what art is. Art is not made in a vacuum. Everybody is influenced by something. And over the years of the progression of a genre of music or a film, of video editing, of whatever painting, whatever it is, it's built upon. I think Trent Reznor has that one line in his one song, a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And it like changes the nature of what you're doing, because it's been removed so much now that it becomes its own thing. And I love when you see modern music suddenly, like a genre comes out that is similar to an older one. I go back to sad boy rap again, but a lot of the riffs that are in that genre, it's like, oh, these are riffs I made in the 90s. These are sad alt riffs. These are grunge riffs. Some of them are pop punk riffs. Like these are things that are now being recycled in this new exciting way, and it's fresh and it's really cool. And this is how art is made. You're taking influence from other things all the time.
It would be really weird to say that I'm derivative of my mother. You know what I mean? It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've taken too much influence from my mother. I mean, I should be my own thing. I can't be. This is really impure. Yeah.
Without thinking, no, I'm actually like my own person, despite all of this influence of genetics.
Nobody is this completely unique thing that exists in a vacuum. Nobody in any context. I guess maybe if you're a feral child or something, maybe. But even then, I mean, there's your surroundings. There's things like it's like we're constantly being influenced by things, and let's accept that, and then let's take the best parts of that we can and create something really interesting. Yeah.
Cool. So how are we doing for time? You want to do some optionals?
I mean, yeah.
Extras?
We got a little bit of time. We know we've had our lurker who's been hanging out.
Nice.
Taking in all this information.
So what's your optional extra 7? And it's not optional extra. It's just another great one, I'm sure.
I'm going to say switch gears. I like switch gears. It's the other ones I have are a little too obvious, but switch gears. So, I mean, sometimes I'm in the middle of doing something. I've done it for too long, and I need to just move on to something else for a little while. So I'm bad at this. There's lots of times when I'm working on a song and I will work on it for like 6 or 7 hours straight, and I'm not getting anywhere at that point. I've been listening to it too much. I've been doing too much to it. It's just sounding the same. Nothing's really, nothing is really happening that's that useful anymore. So stop, put it down, do something else. Maybe it's another creative thing.
Go for a bike ride, man.
Maybe go for a bike ride. Yeah. Maybe do something completely different, but just switch gears. And this is another thing that was researched. Switching gears is a thing that your brain needs. Like you can't just.
Well, and then you have that experience when you go, this is really important for your ears, your eyes, whatever it is. You get blind to what's happening. So if I'm drawing something, and I'm like, oh, this looks really good, blah, blah, blah. I start doing the drugs of my own success or something. And then I walk away, go for a walk in the sunset, whatever it is, come back. I'm like, holy crap, this is super crooked. Or this line is way out of place. And then you're actually able to see it again. The blindness is lifted. Yeah,
this actually happens in the audio engineering field. And there's actually a science behind your ears adjusting. Your ears will actually adjust to a sound like very quickly. So you might get really lost in like a tunnel vision mode when you're mixing. And you might think that something is sounding really, really good in the way you want it to. And then like you say, when you step away and come back, you suddenly realize, wait a minute, like there's been times when I've been struggling with something for hours. I go to bed, I come back the next morning on a fresh brain, and suddenly 5 minutes, and I've resolved what I was struggling with. So yeah, you definitely need those resets. You need to switch gears sometimes, go on to something else, let your brain take a break from something. We're going to have recency bias when we don't do that. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So if I'm
Number
going to
7.
add an optional
7.
eighth,
Optional
you were
8.
optional 7.
Sorry,
Yes,
it's
yes.
optional 8.
This one's, I'm a little bit at risk of getting into like woo-woo territory here, but
Awesome,
I
let's do
promise
it.
I'll try to like keep it real. But I think a big part of not getting writer's block is also deliberately cultivating an abundance mindset. So it's literally just the shift of thinking that some people think that ideas are scarce and really like must be grabbed onto at all costs. And it's easy to think that I'm saying the same thing when I'm talking about when I have a random inspiration, follow it. If the muse whispers, follow it. If I get an idea for a lyric, write it down. That's not the same thing as saying ideas are scarce. It's actually the opposite. It's saying that ideas are abundant. Ideas are everywhere. And if you're in the practice of catching ideas as they come in regular life, you're going to find that you're going to have like way more ideas than you'll ever be able to do anything with.
Yes.
And that's exactly the antidote to writer's block, is to have an abundance of ideas. Writer's block is, I guess, in essence, a scarcity of ideas. But I think a lot of people do hold on to the mindset of it's like, you know how people get really obsessed with like one idea they have, and maybe to the detriment of everything else. Maybe it's like, okay, that idea is okay, but like you could try other things too.
Yeah.
We really are attached to our ideas, and it's like we want to like almost throttle it. We cling so tightly. But if you cultivate an abundance mindset, which is really kind of like a law of attraction thing, and that's where it starts getting a little bit woo woo.
Sure.
But I do find that you just get in the habit of thinking that, ideas are everywhere. And if you think that ideas are everywhere, you're probably going to be noticing them. You're going to be training your attention to find them everywhere. And if you're just in the habit of thinking that ideas are abundant and everywhere, then it would make no sense for you to go through a period of not having access to ideas because they're everywhere. How could they just disappear?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea. No, it's not wooey in its core, right? It's inspiration is everywhere, and I've experienced that. Like I even kind of what I was saying. Like it's not just the art around you; it's the people, it's the places. Like there's just ideas coming out of everything. If you can attune yourself to that, and and there is a place where I think we talked about this in another episode again. So again, go back and watch all the other episodes.
Yeah.
But there is, for lack of a better term, a spiritual nature to creativity. There's a certain amount of you get in touch with something that feels almost transcendent and beyond yourself. And this is when you start becoming attuned to that and being able to see all the ideas around you. Yeah, you're right. There's an abundance of them. You don't feel like there's ever a scarcity. I don't deal with scarcity anymore. I probably did at one point in time. Now I deal with overabundance, and that's where I'm at, where I have so many ideas and so many things I want to do. I have to stop and pick one, and I have to just do it and see it through.
And see it through to completion. Yeah.
Yes.
We should talk about that in another episode. How do you finish something?
Finish something. Yeah.
And it's also, just to like throw this out there, and I'm sure you know this, but it's also okay and normal and exactly what needs to happen to not finish like 99% of what you start.
Yes.
Because there's too many things to finish then.
Yeah, and it's like rather than trying to finish everything, just try to finish something. And that's where I need to get to. It's like I start some songs, I'm like close to being done, and then I'm tired of that. I go on to this next one, close to being done. I'm tired. Like just finish one. Just pick one, finish it. At least one. Don't think you have to do all of it, but you have to do something at least, because it does suck when. For me anyway, when you don't have output.
This is the thing I tell my piano students all the time, actually. So what I do with my lessons when I'm teaching people is we learn a lot of different music. I'm a big fan of high turnover, like fast, like let's just expose yourself to different music all the time, because you're going to pick up so many things from that, as opposed to let's work on one piece for 3 months and nothing else. I think that's really detrimental. You're not really learning that much when you do that. But at the same time, maybe once in a while, pick one of those pieces and get really good at it.
Yeah.
But not every single thing you learn, you're going to get really good at. That would completely defeat the purpose.
Yeah. No, it's all good stuff. I think it's important for us to be diverse. It's important for us to be attuned to the things around us. There's just so many things that, I don't know, the more we talk about this kind of stuff, art is really complex. but also very like simple at the same time. It's like these ideas kind of just make sense. Like they're not. And like I said, I never came up with a lot of these ideas for writer's block by reading research initially. I read research out of curiosity to see if my ideas were kind of aligned, and they were. And so, I mean, there's something very simple about that. And, like, take a break, go for a walk, attune yourself to the things around you. Like, they're simple ideas. They are.
And the simple ideas are the ones that at least I'm resistant to, because I'm like, no, that's too easy. It's got to be more complicated than that. Yeah. Because I'm so deep and complicated. The solutions for my problems must also be deep and complicated.
And that's where it's like, it's difficult to do sometimes, but the idea is very simple, Cool.
So those are our 8 tips. We made it to 8 tips for overcoming writer's block.
And there's a lot out there. If you have your own, actually,
please share.
Yeah, please share. Feel free to put them in the comments and in the chat, whatever, however you find us.
We claim to be no kind of authority in this arena. Just speaking from experience and maybe a little bit of stats.
Yeah, I'd love for some professional commercial musician to come in and just like tear our ideas apart.
I would love that.
And just shred them apart and be like, you guys are full of it. You don't know what you're talking about.
Oh man.
Yeah. We did have a comment on the last episode that somebody was very appreciative of they called it a gem or something.
I saw that. That was really nice.
Yeah. So
that was a really kind
thank you so much for that. Yeah. And we hope you're getting something out of all this. If you're, even if you're popping in and out, you don't have to hear all of it. Just take the little ideas you want and run with them.
But wait, there's more.
There is more. We're not quite done.
I've got a quote of the day.
Yes.
Quoted. And I'm going to read it. And it's really long. So are you guys prepared for this? This is going to be like story time with
Speaking of becoming attuned to my surroundings.
Dave's just like kicking back.
This is
it's like 3 paragraphs. So I don't want to oversell it. We're not about to get into like a 10-minute quote. Okay. But I really liked it. I saved it recently when it popped up. It's a quote from Kurt Vonnegut, who's an author on writing. It's just on learning, sorry. And this is the kind of thing that I need to remind myself of. I don't want to pre-interpret this for you or anything like that. But the reason I'm bringing it up is just because I think that we get really, I don't know, maybe like afraid to try new things or to suck at things. And quotes like this really help me deal with that.
Yeah.
So, Kurt Vonnegut. When I was 15, I spent a month working on an archaeological dig. I was talking to one of the archaeologists one day during our lunch break, and he asked those kinds of getting to know you questions you ask young people. Do you play sports? What's your favorite subject? And I told him, nah, I don't play any sports. I do theater, I'm in choir, I play the violin and piano. I used to take art classes. And he went, wow, that's amazing. And I said, oh no, but I'm not any good at any of them. And he said something then that I will never forget, and which absolutely blew my mind because no one had ever said anything like it to me before. I don't think being good at things is the point of doing them. I think you've got all these wonderful experiences with different skills, and that all teaches you things and makes you an interesting person, no matter how well you do them. And that honestly changed my life. Because I went from a failure, someone who hadn't been talented enough at anything to excel, to someone who did things because I enjoyed them. I had been raised in such an achievement-oriented environment, so inundated with the myth of talent, that I thought it was only worth doing things if you could win at them.
Yeah, this is like the capitalist mindset of our society. Like
the capitalist, yeah, it is.
Capitalism applied to creativity. It is that, and it's like one of the reasons why I always hated Battle of the Bands. I'd prefer.
You did one, right?
I performed in many of them.
Okay.
We won several of them.
Oh, okay.
Which is, all stroke my ego, great. But I hated the idea because, once you put that competitive nature into art, those kinds of things are applicable. Suddenly people feel like failures, or they feel like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not accomplished enough, blah, 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 blah.
Or everything is strictly for some kind of function.
Yeah.
So I'm learning how to do this so that I can be really good at it. Or I'm learning this so that I can earn money or achieve some end. It's like, what about just, enjoying life, being a more rich and interesting human being?
And we've commodified art. So it becomes that. And I'm guilty of this too. I mean, I have, both of us, I guess, we've become successful in different areas. And so you have to really think about, how do I make money doing that? Mm-hmm. And it can really suck the life out of you. It can suck the self-confidence out of you. It can almost, speaking of writer's block, it can create some of those blocks like I was talking about, these people, it's not quite good enough. It's not quite good enough. I mean, let's just create and let's enjoy that creation. Let's not let's not like be a slave to it, right? Like let's use it as a form of expression, as a form of self-improvement, as a form of connection, all these other things. I think if we can make creativity more about that, we're going to be way happier. But unfortunately, this society values output and values productivity. So the starving artist is the cliche, right? It's like, yeah, you don't get paid for doing that art. It's just fun, flimsy little art.
Yeah, and fun isn't really easy to commoditize. It's like, being happy isn't necessarily gonna, if people are happy, they're not gonna buy things.
Yeah,
or
right.
I mean, they will obviously, but you make people feel like they have a lack, that there's something that there's not. They buy skincare products because they fear aging, or they buy, I don't know, 3 guitars because I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of spinning my wheels a little bit, but capitalism kind of helps create fear in us of not being good enough, that we're trying to like constantly fill this void.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm not going to claim that there's any point of life. That would be very bold, and I think that's kind of a highly individualized type of thing.
What a nihilist thing to say. Yeah.
But I can certainly say that the point of life is not to be a commodity, or to simply like consume and produce economic value. Maybe it seems that way, but I don't know. Ultimately, I like that quote because it's like, oh yeah, like basic human happiness, basic enjoyments of life. Isn't that the point?
Yeah, I'm always struggling with that balance in my brain. And when I created my Twitch channel for gaming, initially that's it. It was like, yeah, I want to get really good at this. And back of my mind was like, maybe I can make money one day, which I am making money now. It happened. So,
but that's great.
It's great, but at the same time, it's like I still want to keep away from. What do I do to make more of that money? I just want to do it for fun. I want to enjoy it. I want to like it's something to do with my son. And it gives him some skills.
Life better.
Yeah, it's like it's one of my forms of creativity that shouldn't have a lot of stress. This is kind of one of those forms of creativity that I don't want to have too much stress. It has some. I mean, setting up is difficult, and I do want to do it at a high level because I like doing things at a high level. But I mean, maybe and that episode. Okay, you got to go watch the whole library before you watch this episode. But the episode when we had Spirit Wealth on, Karen was very inspirational that way because she started just creating with the instruments they had.
Even though she wasn't a musician.
She had zero background.
She was surrounded by people who were like really good.
Yeah.
So like I think an ordinary person in that scenario would have been just like, nope, there's no way. I'm not like going to come close to being able to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
And yet she just jumped in playfully with like the spirit of almost like a child.
Yeah, childlike. Yeah. And wow, like how freeing that must feel.
Yeah.
I would love to feel that way. I very rarely feel that way when I'm being creative because eventually proficiency comes into the mix and what are people going to think and all these things. Like I have to fight that a lot. And I'm really working on that in my new song, actually. I want to make it good. I want to make it professional sounding, but I'm also going, it doesn't need to be the most amazing song I've ever written. I just want to get it done and get it out there and enjoy it. And so far, so good. It hasn't become too stressful. With the exception of the auto-tune I'm doing. So it's a really good quote. It's a really good mindset to have, but a difficult one to achieve. Once again, simple concept.
Yeah.
Difficult to achieve.
Never want the easy answers, but it's usually easy answers. We're so simple. Like human beings are so simple, man. It's not like, I don't know. We like to think that we're these like incredibly complex.
No, we have a hierarchy of needs. As long as those are fulfilled, we should do pretty good.
Yeah. Good old Maslow.
Yeah.
And on that note. All right. Well, thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate it. Or listening. Whoever is listening to the podcast, we really appreciate your support. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And keep hanging out with us and having conversations with us and share your ideas.
Share your ideas. Yes. We always want feedback. So please comment, do whatever you want. I will say something kind of exciting that I can announce right here is we will have Rob Hillstead, the one we're quoting all the time.
The one and only.
Will actually appear on this show at some point soon. So I don't know when we're going to release that episode specifically, but we are meeting with him soon. And
it's all going to come together.
It's all going to come together. So you're going to see Rob Hillstead. It's going to be a big like Rob Hillstead appreciation hour.
It really will.
Yeah.
He'll probably be a little uncomfortable with that. But it's okay.
We'll like have like a throne set up for him, like a crown. We'll like
we got to decorate the chair a little bit.
We can have like
Give him a crown.
somebody with fruit like sitting beside him, like yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways,
Well, that's the note then.
that's the note.
All right. Well, lots to look forward to. Stay
Yes.
tuned. Farewell, my friends.
All right. You have a good one and keep conquering your creativity, as they say.
As they say.
As they say. I don't know who says that.
Thanks for checking out this episode of The Creative Coliseum. We'll see you next time. The Creative Coliseum is mixed and edited by David Roman. Executive producers are Allysia Van Betju and David Roman. Gear support provided by Roman Empire Studios. Theme music created by Roman Music YQR. Recorded live on location in Regina, Canada, Treaty 4 territory. Voiceover performed by Sundance Robson. Logo design provided by Danielle Austin. Special thanks Kyle Parkinson, Laura Posadka, and Rob Hillstead. The Creative Coliseum is a Nerd Party entertainment production in conjunction with Piano TV. Now get back out there and conquer your creativity.